It's 11:40 at night and I'm scrolling through my camera roll instead of sleeping. 318 photos since January. I open my profile to check something and there it is. 4 posts. 4. The other 314 just stayed with me. My friend Wren does this thing, watches every story, every post, every tagged photo within minutes of it going up. They've liked exactly none of it in 2 years. I used to think that was strange. Now I think Wren's the only person I know who's actually paying attention. So here's the question that keeps circling back to me at 11:40, at midnight, at 2 in the morning. Why would anyone choose to stay invisible when the entire world seems to be begging to be seen? What are they protecting? What do they know that I don't? Okay, that's the easy version. I was calling it shyness, introversion, a personality quirk, nothing deeper. But sitting here with 318 unshared photos, I don't think that's true anymore. I think there's an entire psychology underneath it, and I think I'm part of it. Here's the actual version. For people like Wren, not posting isn't absence, it's control. It's the one lever left in a world where everything else gets pulled out of your hands. If you never show the world the photo, the world never gets to own an opinion about it. Silence, it turns out, isn't empty. It's a locked door, and Wren keeps the only key. I didn't choose to think this way, but somewhere in the last 10 years, social media rewired how I define myself. I catch myself narrating my own life in captions before I've even lived the moment. Coffee at 7, but already I'm framing the cup. Social media didn't ask permission to move in. It just quietly rearranged the furniture of how I see me. Wren watches everything and reacts to almost nothing. At first I read that as cold. Now I read it as discipline. They think before they respond, if they respond at all. They notice the version of a person before the polish, before the caption gets written. I've started to wonder if the noisy ones, me included, are the ones actually missing things. I looked this up at 1 in the morning because I couldn't let it go. Psychologists studying people who rarely post keep landing on the same traits: self-restraint, introspection, a kind of internal quiet that doesn't need to be spoken aloud to exist. It's not that they have less going on inside, it might be that they have more, and they've just stopped exporting it. Here's a pattern interrupt for you because I need to admit it plainly. I checked my last post's likes 4 times today. 4. Not because I needed to, I told myself, just curious. But curious 4 times before noon is its own kind of confession, and it's the opposite of whatever Wren has going on. The difference, I think, is this. I keep reaching for proof I exist. Wren isn't trying to prove anything to anyone, they're trying to understand what's actually happening to them, quietly, without an audience grading the outcome. Proving and understanding look similar from the outside. From the inside, they cost completely different things. Here's the layer under that. Every post I've ever made, if I'm honest, was a kind of audition, not a diary entry, a casting call. Look at this dinner, this trip, this haircut, and please, silently, tell me it was the right one. I called it sharing for years. I think I have to call it something closer to auditioning now. Every caption is the same 6 words wearing a different outfit. This is who I am. Approved? I wrote a caption tonight about a sunset I didn't even really watch because I was too busy deciding which filter made the sky look like I felt something. I felt the phone more than I felt the sky. That's the part I don't love admitting. This is the part I keep avoiding, so let me just say it. The 2 years I spent posting almost daily, I wasn't building a self. I was renting one out, hour by hour, to whoever scrolled past. When I finally muted the app for a week, the silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like getting a deposit back on something I didn't know I'd handed over. Somewhere around day 4 of that week, I ate a whole plate of pasta and didn't touch my phone once until it was cold and gone. No photo, no plating. I just tasted it. I can't remember the last time before that I'd eaten something without narrating it to someone who wasn't even there yet. Wren told me once, half joking, that they don't trust anything that looks good in a photo anymore. I laughed, but I think about it constantly now. There's a hunger underneath their silence, not for attention, but for something closer to the opposite, for a version of a moment that never had to survive being looked at by strangers. Okay, that's the easy version. I was calling it minimalism, decluttering, a trend. Here's the actual version. Refusing to post isn't about having less. It's refusing to let a whole, complicated, ordinary life get flattened into 6 highlight reels a month. My life is not a highlight reel. Most of it, if I'm honest, is Tuesday. There are things I've started protecting on purpose now. Not hiding, protecting. The way my mom laughed so hard she couldn't finish a sentence last month. An ugly, honest cry I had in my car in March. None of it went anywhere. None of it needed to. Silence, depth, the unfiltered mess of it. I'm starting to think that's the actual inventory of a life, not the 4 posts. Wren told me the real reason they stopped, eventually, over coffee, no phone on the table. It wasn't a plan, it was burnout. They used to post everything, every trip, every plate, every sunset, until one Tuesday in 2023 it just stopped feeling real, and they haven't been able to explain exactly when the shift happened. Here's what nobody tells you about sharing something beautiful: it comes with a bill. Wren said every gorgeous photo they posted quietly demanded the next one be more gorgeous. One trip wasn't enough, it had to be topped. They weren't living the vacation anymore, they were producing a sequel to the last one before they'd even landed. So Wren just stopped. No farewell post, no taking a break, be back soon. Just a feed that quietly went still. I went back and checked. Their last real post was from 2 summers ago, a coffee cup, 12 likes. After that, nothing. Not a disappearance anyone announced, just a slow exit nobody was invited to watch, which, they said, was the entire point. People assumed Wren stopped caring. That's the part they got wrong. Not posting a single photo of their grandmother's last birthday didn't mean it mattered less. Wren said it mattered so much they couldn't stand the idea of it existing as content, competing for attention against someone's lunch. Caring too much, it turns out, can look identical to not caring at all from the outside. Here's the term I found at 2 in the morning that finally explained Wren to me: psychological ownership. It's the feeling that a thought, a memory, a moment belongs entirely to you. The theory says the second you share it, that ownership doesn't just get copied, it gets diluted. What was fully yours becomes a little bit everyone's. I posted my grandfather's 80th birthday 2 years ago. 41 comments, mostly kind. But somewhere in there was a stranger's joke I still remember more clearly than the actual party. I didn't just share the moment, I handed strangers a vote on it. I think that's the trade nobody explains to you before you make it. So Wren keeps things back now, almost on principle, not out of secrecy, out of ownership. A hike stays a hike, a good cry stays a good cry. Nothing gets converted into shared property waiting for someone's opinion. I've started doing the same thing with small things, and it feels less like hiding and more like keeping the receipt. Here's the pattern interrupt I didn't want to write. The urge to share isn't natural, it's trained. I know this because I felt my thumb twitch toward the share button before I'd even finished feeling the actual feeling. That reflex took years to build. 10 years of likes, hearts, and notifications quietly teaching my nervous system that a moment isn't real until it's witnessed. I did the math on this one. Roughly, from what I've read, about 10 years of daily dopamine hits, tiny ones, every time a post gets a heart. That's not a metaphor, that's the same chemical pathway involved in actual reward and actual addiction. 10 years is long enough to convince an entire generation, myself included, that validation and worth are the same thing measured in a different unit. When Wren stepped outside that loop, they called it relief. I think a more honest word is rebellion, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't come with a manifesto. It takes something to resist a system that's engineered, literally engineered by people paid to engineer it, to keep you hooked. Healing and rebellion, it turns out, can be the exact same act wearing 2 different names. Since then, Wren cooks without photographing a single plate. They traveled to Portugal last year and came back with maybe 6 pictures, all blurry, all for themselves. They cried at a movie and told no one until I asked directly. Nothing performed, nothing captioned, just a life happening in real time, with no second audience waiting on the other side of a screen. If you've made it this far into my notes app, you're the kind of person who reads other people's private thoughts too, so stick around. I write these down regularly, mostly at hours I shouldn't still be awake, because here's the layer I almost didn't include. Not everyone who stays quiet online is at peace. Some of it, I'm learning, is just fear wearing a calmer name. There's a term for this too: self-presentational pressure, the exhausting sense of being watched even in the exact moment nobody is actually watching. I've felt it typing a text message and deleting it 6 times before sending nothing at all. 6 times, over a sentence about weekend plans. That's not caution. That's a nervous system bracing for an audience that mostly exists in my head. For some people, the math is simple and brutal. The emotional cost of being seen outweighs whatever connection they might get back. Wren told me once they'd rather stay a mystery to 200 people than be misread by even 10 of them. I used to think that sounded lonely. Now I wonder if it's actually just a stricter definition of being known. Here's what surprised me most. The quietest accounts I follow, the ones that haven't posted in years, belong to some of the loudest minds I know in person. Wren has opinions about everything, feelings about everything, entire theories they've never once typed into a caption. They're not absent from their own life. They're overflowing, privately, off the record, where nobody's counting. So maybe the choice not to post is its own quiet declaration. In a culture that constantly says, "Look at me," staying invisible on purpose says something else entirely. I exist whether or not you're watching. That's not shrinking. If I'm honest with myself at 11:40 at night, that might be one of the harder, braver sentences a person can hold on to. Wren said something to me once that I wrote down word for word: not everything I live through is meant to be witnessed. I used to think documenting a moment was how you honored it. Now I think some moments actually get smaller the second you point a camera at them, like they were only ever meant to be held, not framed. The heaviest things in my life, the year my parents separated, the 8 months I spent barely getting out of bed after a breakup, none of it has a single post attached to it. It happened in kitchens and cars and at 2 in the morning texts to one person, not 300 followers. Grief and growth, I'm realizing, mostly happen off camera, in the parts of the timeline that were never public. Okay, here's the actual version underneath that. Being unseen isn't the same as being insignificant. I think it might be the opposite. The version of me that exists only in private, unposted, unperformed, might be closer to the real one than any version I've ever captioned. Identity doesn't get built in the highlight reel. I think it gets built in the footage that never made the cut. Social media was supposed to close the distance between people. Some nights it feels like it just measures the distance more precisely. 318 photos, 4 posts, and I still went to bed most nights this year feeling like nobody actually knew what my Tuesday looked like. Connection and visibility, I'm starting to think, were never actually the same thing. When I stopped posting for that 1 week, something quiet happened. I found out who texted me anyway, with no story to react to, no post to comment on. 2 people did. Just 2, out of the however many hundred who'd normally double tap something. That number should have stung. Instead, it told me exactly who was actually paying attention to me, not my feed. That kind of contact, the unposted kind, feels different in the body. Heavier somehow, warmer, harder to fake. Wren calls it up front, no caption required. A phone call instead of a story reply. Someone showing up instead of hearting a photo of the thing they could have shown up for. I didn't know I was starving for that particular version of being noticed until I got a small taste of it. Wren has stories I would never believe if I read them online. A year working on a boat, a stretch of time I still don't fully understand, a friendship that ended in a way they've never once alluded to publicly. They save all of it for the actual table, across from an actual person, where a face can react before an algorithm decides who gets to see it. There's a phrase for what Wren seems to have that I'm still building for myself: identity security. Knowing exactly who you are on a random Tuesday when literally nobody is watching, no notifications, no likes pending, nothing performing. I don't have that yet, not fully. I still check my phone like it's going to confirm something about me that I should already know without it. But I'm starting to understand it's not arrogance, what Wren has. It's not superiority either, which is what I used to quietly assume. It's peace, the plain, unglamorous kind that doesn't need an audience to hold it up. And at 11:40 on a night like this one, camera roll open, 4 posts to my name, I think peace might be the thing I've actually been chasing this whole time. 6 weeks in, and something shifted that I didn't expect. The light through the kitchen window at 7 in the morning looked different, not because it changed, but because I wasn't already thinking about how to frame it. I used to see a moment and immediately picture the caption underneath it. Now I just see the moment. Colors got louder. Time stopped moving in 15-second increments. Okay, that's the pretty version. Here's what actually happened underneath it. Stepping outside the noise didn't feel graceful. It felt like static clearing from a radio I didn't know was on. I'd walk into a room and actually be in the room instead of narrating it to an audience that wasn't there. The quiet wasn't peaceful at first. It was just quiet, and quiet had gotten unfamiliar. No captions, no angles, just me standing in it. I noticed the guy at the deli counter has been wearing the same faded green apron for at least 4 years, something I never would have clocked when half my brain was scouting for content. Without the lens between me and the moment, I stayed inside it instead of stepping outside to document it for someone else's scroll. Here's the part that made me feel less noble about the whole thing. Every like, every comment, every little red notification bubble triggers dopamine, the exact same chemical involved in reward and addiction. I wasn't just seeking connection when I used to post constantly. I was chasing a hit, 40, 50 times a day, and calling it community because that word felt better than the alternative. So quitting wasn't willpower in the clean, inspirational sense people imagine. It was more like standing in front of something built by very smart people specifically to keep me hooked, and choosing, over and over, 41 separate mornings, not to open it first thing. Resisting a loop engineered by teams with psychology degrees isn't disinterest, it's discipline, the unglamorous, repetitive kind nobody photographs. There's a term for it, apparently. Internal locus of control, meaning your sense of worth comes from inside you instead of bouncing off everyone else's screen. I didn't know that phrase when I stopped posting. I just knew I was tired of needing 40 strangers to confirm a sunset was worth watching. Turns out I'd been quietly building the thing psychologists have a name for. I almost didn't write the next part down. There's research on this, real studies, not just my own theory scribbled at midnight. People who take extended breaks from posting show a measurable rise in emotional stability and life satisfaction. I felt that shift around month 2. this strange solid ground under thoughts that used to wobble depending on how many people had seen them that day. Here's the part I kept avoiding. Before I stopped, I was scrolling 4 or 5 hours a day, watching everyone else's highlight reel while I sat behind the scenes of my own unfinished life. There's a fatigue that comes from that, quiet and slow, not dramatic enough to name at the time. I compared my worst Tuesday to someone's best vacation and came up short every single time. So no, it wasn't bitterness that made me quiet the account. I want to be honest about that because it would be easier to say I got fed up with everyone else's fake happiness. The truth is smaller and less flattering. I just needed to stop bleeding attention I didn't have to spare. Self-preservation, not a grudge. Nobody owes an explanation for choosing to keep something. For a long stretch, I thought I had to post proof of being okay, or people would assume the opposite. 26 years old and still performing wellness for an audience that mostly wasn't even watching that closely. At some point, I stopped needing the caption to make the happiness true. If it happened and nobody saw it, it still happened. That took longer to believe than I expected. Okay, here's the thing I actually haven't told anyone, not directly. Privacy was never loneliness for me, even when it looked that way from outside. It was the first real intimacy I'd had with my own thoughts in years. No editing pass, no imagining how a stranger might read it. Just a thought, sitting there, belonging entirely to me before it belonged to anyone's opinion of it. The confidence that came out the other side of this doesn't look like anything on a screen. It's quieter than that. It's not needing to announce a good week to 1,200 people who half remember my name. It's just being calm at my own kitchen table on an ordinary Wednesday, knowing something good happened and letting it stay exactly where it happened, unbroadcast, undiluted, mine. So here I am again, phone face down on the table like it started all of this, which I guess it kind of did. I keep thinking about that line, that not everything meaningful needs a witness, and I believe it now, mostly. Except there's this one thing that happened last week that I still haven't figured out whether I'm allowed to keep entirely for myself or whether keeping it is just